there's obviously lots of interest in what we're talking about this afternoon. So without any further ado, we'll go through the agenda. Item 1, there are no apologies. Item 2, notification of requests from members of the public to address the meeting. So I understand that everybody who's registered to speak is here, so I won't go through them. So we'll call members of the public up in order of the items of which they're registered. And what we're going to do, because there's a lot of interest in the library item, we're going to move that to the first item on the agenda, just to help so everybody doesn't have to sit around all afternoon. Okay. And what I'd just ask as well, if we could have a bit of quiet in the background. Thank you. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held in public. Cabinet, do we agree those minutes from the 9th of April? Thank you. And item 4, declarations of interest by councillors, if there are any. Cabinet, are there any declarations of interest over and above what's already registered? Okay, thank you. Item 5, there are no formal announcements other than that there's a rumour that we're awaiting an announcement from the Secretary of State imminently, but that hasn't happened yet.
It's been made.
Sorry?
It's been made.
Oh, it's been made. Okay, so that's in the positive. We've got the green light to go, Tony.
Maybe it's saying that the order's been question's been laid. So
okay. So with that bombshell, so that's a massive development, isn't it? Yeah. So. For public, we're awaiting the announcement from the Secretary of State on the future of local government in Northamptonshire, basically whether or not he's going to approve the 2 unitary submission that was put in by the 8 councils back in August last year. So we understand that that has been agreed, although we've not formally seen anything. And what we do need to understand as well is whether we're talking about April 2020 or April 2021. I don't know if Tony could enlighten us, or he'd rather not at this stage.
Well, Chairman, I've just got a message saying that the written ministerial statement has been made. What I don't have is a copy of it.
Okay.
But my understanding is that it is a recommendation for a 2 unitary solution as proposed, with elections in May 2020 and the implementation in April 2021.
Okay, so that's 2 years then. So, okay, that's a very interesting development, and no doubt there'll be plenty of media interests in that announcement. So we'll have to get a copy of that, and maybe we could request one from somebody. Barbell.
We've got it.
Oh, you've got it. Okay. So
Yes.
okay, well, I won't read this out, but there's quite a lot of detail in writing. So I take it that it basically states what...
Shall I do it? I've just had a quick read of it as I walk.
Yeah, okay, you do that, Teresa.
Literally taken it hot. So I haven't had a chance to read through all of it, but the key points are obviously the Minister considered the consultation responses. 90% of the respondents by telephone agreed that it was a need to make changes to local government here. 74% agreed with unitary proposals, and 83% of the over 6,000 individuals who responded to the open questionnaire agreed that there was a need for change. There's a lot more detail in that, but that's just the headline. He's considered the proposal and the report of the Children's Commissioner as well, and the announcement covers the fact that he's concluded the proposals meet our publicly stated criteria for local government reorganisation. He's satisfied that the proposals would improve local government services delivery in the area, has a good deal of local support in the area, and of each new unitary represents a credible legal geography. So that's the statutory bit. He's agreed that there will be a children's trust. He's gone into the reasons why he's agreed that. And he's decided to issue a statutory direction requiring the establishment of a children's trust. And that will seek parliamentary approval of the secondary legislation using his various powers. He's also set out the new arrangements to be operational from the 1st of April 2021. And he recognises that a delay in implementation will mean potential savings estimated in the proposals will not be realised for another year. He's clear, though, that the extended implementation period means we can be confident that there will be a safe and effective transition to the new service delivery arrangements across the whole of the area. He then goes on to say, to support the transition, I have decided to establish shadow authorities. I envisage the May 2020 local elections in Northamptonshire will be elections to those shadow authorities rather than to district councils, with the district elections currently due on that date being cancelled. So then final paragraph, he now intends to prepare and lay before Parliament drafts of the necessary secondary legislation to give effect to his decision. And establishing these new unitary councils will be a significant step towards ensuring the people and businesses across Northamptonshire can in future have the sustainable, high-quality local services they deserve. And he goes on to say a little bit more. So that's the highlights from it. You can read it at your leisure.
Okay, thank you. Can we get a link we can send round to all members to that document? I'm sure we can organise that, can't we?
Published anyway, it'll be on the...
Okay. Right, we will move on. So we said we'd take item 14 first, which is the library item, given the amount of interest. So we have a number of speakers. So the first one is Mr. Nick Adams, if you'd like to come forward to the green chair. Sorry? Mr. Amos, sorry. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Amos, you've got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As we know and would agree, building strong communities involves people and places. People of goodwill to care for their community, places where people can gather to support one another. There are people of goodwill, but there is just one public building where people can gather to support one another, Higham Ferrers Library. The library is far more than a book lending service. It's a place for the people of Higham to come and find support. A place where pupils can escape the noise and distraction at home to do their schoolwork and prepare for their exams. A place of support for young mums struggling to bring up their children on their own. A place of vital support for the elderly with loneliness and struggling to come to terms with the loss of loved ones. A place of learning and education where people of differing ages and backgrounds can meet. A place that, if lost, would leave a massive hole in hundreds of people's lives. We've lost many services that support vulnerable people in the town, services supporting children, families and the elderly. Higham Library saves our county money by reducing the demand on key services such as adult and children's social care. The Higham Ferrers Library was formed in September at a public meeting last year. On October the 5th, the committee met with Anne Lovely, Strategic Manager of Core Frontline Services, to discuss the imminent plan to reduce the library's opening hours. The committee offered to recruit library volunteers in order to maintain those hours. It was also proposed a long-term plan to take on the running of the library, but at a peppercorn rent. The committee held a second public meeting later that month, where 70% of the respondents came forward to volunteer to become library volunteers. Training was then delivered, and within a matter of a couple of weeks, those volunteers were in place, maintaining the opening hours of that library. 3 months later, in January, the committee met again with the Officers of Care Frontline Services to discuss the long-term future of the library, where again peppercorn rents were discussed, and it was felt that this was a potential way forward. 4 weeks later, the committee was presented with a proposal for a rent of £19,000 per annum, with terms requiring the community to take on the full maintenance and repair of the building. The level of rent is not close to a viable level for a community-run library. Furthermore, the building has not been well maintained for many years, so how could the community take on the liability for that building? We, the committee, and the people of Higham Ferrers believe that we have done our share, that we have worked closely with Higham Ferrers Town Council and NCC to find a way to keep that library open. We've met all the demands made on us. Instead, NCC have reduced the staffing levels, failed to maintain the building, planned to move out groups, reduced the amount of equipment available there. Our position has not changed. We're still offering to run the library at no charge to NCC. Will you support us and work in partnership with us to keep Higham Ferrers Library open at a nominal rent and provide the building in good repair before discussions about our share in its future upkeep? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amos. We've got a copy of what you've presented, so we'll try and get a formal response back to you. Thank you. Okay, next is Mrs. Alison Richards. Is Alison here? Oh, right, yeah, sorry. Okay, thank you. You have 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. What are the pitfalls of these final library plans? Have you made any positive progress? This is an excellent report, well written, no spelling errors. Thank you, Chloe. Some of its content is a vast improvement on the position we were in last year. But, as with the curate's egg in the famous Punch cartoon, it is only good in parts. There's one big black hole, in which lurk 2 major pitfalls for 17 of our 36 libraries. You are about to remove them from your statutory provision, and it's here in black and white. It's not welcomed, and the consultation responses show that, but this is what you plan to do. Then there is the property pitfall. Just this month, I have met with library volunteers, supporters and campaigners from several other authorities in the country. I've never seen so many drop jaws. My answer to them has had to be, yes, but this is Northamptonshire. What an indictment. After today, there'll be months of negotiation. You want to assess the business plans of 22 different community organisations to satisfy your need for best value, etc. There's no best value for the volunteers who will have to run 22 libraries. It's ironic that the 5 communities that are amongst those most likely to be successful in doing that are the 5 that still have some bit of statutory protection. I have grave fears for some of the other 17. We're by no means out of the woods yet on the libraries issue, and negotiations on properties are going to be demanding for NCC staff, town and parish councils, other organisations and volunteers, those private individuals who should never have been put in this position in the first place. Once a month now, my local library is opened for 2 hours on a Saturday morning by volunteers. This month, one of them received the criticism from a member of the public. Why is there not a member of paid staff on duty? To that person, an unpaid volunteer was clearly unacceptable. Libraries have never been expensive for councils to run, but what they have provided is invaluable. By distancing NCC from that valuable resource in so many of our communities and resolutely expecting not to provide the buildings, you will create a pitfall for library volunteers that may prove disastrous for some. We saw drastic cuts to our county library service last year. Opening hours slashed, many staff made redundant. Now you plan to continue those cuts, and for those libraries losing statutory status, if there is failure of the plan in this report, then this is the writing on the wall, as this would be outside NCC's statutory provision. If this arrangement becomes unviable, the service would cease. Potentially, goodbye to them. Is that not a pitfall? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Richards. Then we've got Dr. Graham Johnson. Willie, please. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I want to support the comments of residents of Irchester as reported in the library consultation analysis in Appendix B, pages 76 to 80, paragraphs 398, 400, 402, 409, 413 and 417, indicating that the County Council has failed to give sufficient attention to the general local belief that the library morally belongs to the people of Irchester, as it was merely vested in the County Council and should be returned to them. Typically, paragraph 398 reads, many respondents felt that the current library building had been gifted to the local community. They expressed their concern and felt that the County Council had not taken this into account. Some respondents felt that the Council was being dismissive of this fact and causing unnecessary confusion as to the future of the physical building of the library. Many respondents said that the library should exist in its present location as it was provided for that specific purpose, with others adding that it should revert back into the ownership of the parish council. Prior to this, I was informed in a letter dated the 31st of January 2019 that LGS Law Limited had advised the County Council, and I quote, that there will not be a vesting certificate as the legislation which gave rise to the transfer did not require one. The letter continued, based on the information stated above, it is the County Council's view that no vesting certificate exists as one was not required under the Act. But in my letter dated the 7th of February, I replied, and again I quote, "I am sure that both of these statements are not correct for the simple reason that I have documentary evidence that a vesting certificate does exist. And what is more, the County Council gave an undertaking over its common seal that the Council would keep the certificate in safe custody. I duly provided a photocopy of the relevant 3 sections of the document in my possession. I've got it here. I also wrote, I have not seen this vesting certificate, so I'm quite prepared to accept that my interpretation of the actual meaning of the certificate may well be completely wrong. But nevertheless, I hope you agree that at least it should be examined. If this does not happen, my recommendation to the Parish Council would be to apply for judicial review. Meanwhile, my question is this. Since my letter dated the 7th of February 2019 to the County Council, what and when precisely have specific acts, searches and other activities been carried out by Northamptonshire County Council to locate the vesting certificate relating to the legal title to Urchester Library? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Very quickly.
That item C on your agenda, is in black and white, but if you want to see it in colour, that's what it looks like in colour, and there's no green at all, and Urchester is negative all the way across, but there are no greens positive for anyone.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker is Bridget Araga. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Thank you, Bridget, whenever you are ready.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of Long Buckby Library. As you'll know, Buckby Library and Hub Committee Group is ready and willing to run Long Buckby Library as a community-managed library. Our question is, please would the county reconsider their proposal that designates Long Buckby Library as a community-managed library outside of the statutory provision? We've now had the opportunity to review the documents and the proposals made for each library and believe there are compelling reasons why Long Buckby Library could be retained as part of the statutory provision while under community management. Our reasons as follows. We notice in the documentation that the mileage for us from our nearest Daventry Library used to be 4.8 but has now gone up to 5. And using the county's interactive mapping tool, we have estimated that Long Buckby Library is just over 5 miles by road from the new Daventry Library. Moreover, with the reduction in bus services since January, when the categories were drawn up, it is no longer feasible for library users to get to Daventry during the day using public transport, despite the Parish Council's best efforts to produce a midday service. This service runs in one direction only. Secondly, we are listed as a high active library and are relatively higher than a number of libraries that are retained as part of statutory provision. 3, we are surprised that as a designated children's centre with a high use of over 1,000 attendances and very highly valued by the village, we are set outside statutory provision, whereas some libraries with lower usage are part of the statutory provision. Fourthly, we are listed as providing relatively high value for money, as shown by the cost per visit data, and considerably better value than some libraries that are not being proposed for community management and remain as part of the statutory provision. We are particularly concerned about the discrepancy between Earls Barton Library and Long Buckby Library. Earls Barton, for various strategic reasons, has been designated as remaining within the statutory provision and will need to pay only peppercorn rent while being run as a community library. This arrangement has been made to reduce the financial burden on the community group and therefore reduce the risk of failure. Long Buckby, which is a bigger library with higher usage and lower cost per visit, has been designated outside the statutory provision and will have to pay a rent of £9,000 per annum. Although this represents a 40% reduction of the market value, it is a significant amount. Long Buckby Parish Council has agreed to pay this rent, subject to the terms of the lease, but that will effectively preclude them from providing any financial contribution to the operating costs of the library. It will take the community group time to build the fundraising capacity necessary to raise 10 to 15,000 each year to cover running costs. If Long Buckby Library were to be retained as part of the statutory provision for the reasons I've set out, and were also to benefit from a peppercorn rent, the Parish Council would be better able to help us in this start-up phase. I can mention that we have recently approached Daventry District Council for financial help during our start-up phase, but we haven't yet had indication that they are able to help us. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've certainly noted all the points made by the speakers, and we'll try and incorporate those as we move forward where possible. Okay, so to present the substantive item is Councillor Cecile Evans-Swift.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the four speakers, and I will start my comment, please. You have the report, and you have all read the report. We have all been waiting for a long time for this report, and I am pleased that Alison said that it was well written and easy to read, because that is great for me. It's meant a lot. So to arrive where we are today, it has been a long road, and we have to give thanks to the people who have allowed us to be at that position now. So I would like to thank all the community group, and two of you are here today, and the parishes which have been involved, the district and borough, which help NCC to arrive to that proposal. The member of the public, we had 2,255 reply during the consultation. Councillor, a lot of you came to the open day when the library was a community library, and a few of you are in the room today. And also Teresa Grant, the CEO, and the Director of Public Health, Lucy Whiteman, have worked very hard with all officers behind the scene to arrive at what you have in front of you today. I will not go why we are here today. Everybody knows which situation we are in Northamptonshire, and we have done our utmost to reach that position. So I will not go in great lengths through the report, because it is quite long. But I would highlight the following point. The proposal represents a credible plan for how each library can remain open. 14 will remain under direct council management to satisfy the council's statutory duty, with a further 5 also providing statutory services but run by a community. The remaining 17 will be managed entirely by the community. The consultation ran for just over 8 weeks, and even were held at each library where changes were proposed. The consultation feedback is reflected in the nature of the proposal before you today. And as you know, change is never easy. And it has been, we have to note, it has been embraced by few communities more than we have always expected. Community just raised to the plate. And to relieve all the anxieties that the community could have, NCC will support the group in the development of their proposal. We are just at the beginning of the next phase. It's the beginning of the journey, and we will have an individual meeting with all the 17 managed library, community library. NCC has made 3 changes due to the consultation, and the changes are for Danielsholm, Kingshope and Woottonfield. Also, 2 sessions have already been organized by NCC for the community group to see what is the next stage and how they could be prepared. Also, in the report, you have the equality impact assessment, and I promise you, all the cabinet members have read them. I have made sure that I email them and remind them. So, it's a long document, but it was very valuable, and you could see how each proposal can be mitigated and where mitigation could not be found, what was the impact on the community. And finally, the final outcome is still subject to discussion and a service level agreement between each NCC and each library. Finally, I wanted to point out that it still helps with the budget at NCC, and Malcolm Longley and our CFO will need this proposal in front of you for the budget next year. And I am pleased to remind all councillors that that budget was approved by us in the budget in February this year. And now I spoke a bit the finance. We also have to note that £1 million will be allocated to the library due to a Section 106 money, which is going to be very, very helpful in the next process. So if the Cabinet is minded to approve the paper in front of you, I just have few words. I would like to wish the officer and the group all success, because it's our intention to deliver all the library. We have no plan to close any library. We want to work with the group, and we'll do our utmost to satisfy that. Now, as you have read, and as Mrs. Richard said, it might close, but that is not our prime purpose. Our prime purpose is to give the library back to where it belongs, for certain cases, to their community, who are very proud and very active. So I leave it to the Cabinet to discuss, and if they have any question for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cecile. Are there any comments by colleagues? Okay, well, I just want to add that the paper we've got before us today is a very good, high-quality report without any spelling mistakes, as pointed out, and it represents a significant amount of progress, with the caveat that we know, as Cecile just spoken, that there is still some work to be done on some of the libraries, and that's clearly laid out in the paper. One of the things that Cecile and I did last year, in around about July, was made ourselves available to all the groups. We met with them up at the main library, and we listened to the frustrations that were coming through about the process we were engaged in at that time. And we gave the assurance that we would listen and try and do something about moving this on to a better place, given that, you know, the value of libraries to communities and all that sort of stuff. And when the commissioners came and when the new chief exec came, we made it clear that, yes, we've got some very serious issues to sort out and work on at the council, you know, in children's services and adult social care and the finances, but the library and the library issue is something that we'd spent a lot of time on. We'd heard a lot of stuff from public, and that we were determined to try and do something about. And Teresa took it upon herself to back us and listen. And we're at a point where we've not closed any libraries during this process, and we've hopefully got some plans moving forward to try and keep every single library open. But we know there are some issues that we've still got to sort through with some of them, but I want to put on record the thanks to Lucy and her team, some of the officers, and Lovely was mentioned, and I've only heard positive comments about them in how they've engaged in this process. I want to thank Cecile as well for the work that she's put into this, and also the volunteers. So I think overall, yes, we've got some work to do still, but we're in a much, much better place than we were certainly 8 or 12 months ago with the library proposals. And I just want to, before we finish off, or I pass back to you for any other comments, Cecile, just to check with Cabinet that we have read the equalities impact assessments. We made that very clear. Thank you. So, Cecile, is there anything further that you wanted to add?
As I said, it's the next step of the process, and we have in mind for all the group, a timetable, and the handover to the library, to the community group, will change for each group, but we plan to start in October. And every library, some might take a bit longer, because as we said, the service level agreement and all the negotiation with the group is quite bespoke, and it's important for that to have a bit of leeway for the library to be, but we will start in October the process of delivering the library for the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stanborough, do you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got a couple of questions, but I'll start by something that I tried to do earlier, but we were distracted by local government reform issues. Declaring an interest as a member of the group that's hopefully going to be taking on Danesholme Library. I will not talk about Danesholme Library. I'm talking about the generality of this proposal. But noted anyway. So can I just say, echo your thanks to the County Council staff who have been involved in this whole process, especially Anne Lovely, who was professional throughout. Very good. And also thank the Chief Executive for her championing of the library service since her arrival, and that's been really, really welcome. Couple of questions. Risks, I think, is the first one. The risk assessment does talk about the possibility, well, it talks about the County Council being confident that the number of libraries NCC are maintaining as statutory are comprehensive and efficient. There is nevertheless a risk there, isn't there, that someone might take a different view, and that you may receive a further challenge around that. I'm just wondering what, if any, independent testing and analysis of the Council's view has been done to back up the Council's view that what's being done does provide a comprehensive and efficient library service. And then a couple of concerns that I've heard over the course of this process. One is around property at libraries currently, and I do note in the report somewhere, because I read it this morning, it says that everything is going to be left in place in the libraries for the new groups to take them on. That's really welcome, because there have been some concerns about items that might have been provided by friends groups and the like, and whether they would still be there. So that's really welcome. And I trust that will happen. And the other issue perhaps is the one about rents. Some libraries that groups looking to be taken on, there are stories at least, if not, and they may be anecdotal, they may have some basis in fact, of rents being proposed to groups that are perhaps in excess of the cost to the County Council of the premises. Is that something that the Council is likely to pursue, or is there at least the opportunity for rents to be proposed that are no more than the cost to the County Council for where a premises is rented, for instance? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll ask the Chief Exec to respond to those.
I'll just answer your last bit of the question around the properties and the rents. And the approach we've taken has to be a consistent approach, because not least if we get judicially reviewed, that could cause us issues if we haven't been consistent. We got independent external advice on the property values and property rents and how we should approach the discounting of those rents. So each of the libraries has been categorised, as you've seen in the report, and where we apply, we still have to apply best value as a local authority in terms of the rent that we're requesting. However, with that external advice as well, we found that where a library is continuing as a library, in those circumstances, we would give a discount of 40% on that rent, which we felt was fair and reasonable. However, in other places where we've applied, and again, we'll have complied it consistently, regardless of what we were paying previously, we've applied it consistently to the groups that are taking over, because we can't treat one differently than the other. And in one instance, for example, where we have a library group who are a bit concerned about the rent, when we were paying a peppercorn rent previously and now we're asking for a market rent minus 40%, we invested millions of pounds in the building. and that's the reason we had a peppercorn rent. So therefore, under best value, we have an obligation to get back some of that major investment that was put into the building. So it's very different for every single library, but what we've tried to do is apply consistency to that. And we are still working with all of the library groups, and those that are struggling to make a viable business case, we will still continue to work with them and try and make it viable in whatever way we can support them to do that. And it's our ambition, and still remains our ambition, that we close no libraries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Cabinet, are we happy to... Oh, sorry, I didn't see you indicating.
I indicated a long time ago, Leader, and I'd like to nominate Councillor Birch.
Okay, Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here to represent the residents of Kingsthorpe South, which is my division, who value their library and all the facilities and community activities which have run successfully for age groups. I understand many libraries are ready and willing and able to proceed with this transfer. Kingsthorpe is not. But Northgate School Arts Academy, post-16 provision, the Beehive, see the library as an opportunity to provide work experience for their special needs students and to continue to manage Kingsthorpe Library. The community managed library model would suit. NCC do not own the building. The lease has 65 years to run, and NCC paid up this upfront at the start. I think Teresa's just alluded to that. There's little or no rent paid at present, and NCC are wanting to profit, in a sense, to the tune of £15,300
Sorry, Councillor Birch. We're certainly not looking to profit, but the idea of member contributions from the end there is to ask questions. Is there a question here?
Well, I would like you to reconsider, and I just put in the case for this, because what is being offered by Northgate is an opportunity for their special needs pupils to have work experience there, and they will also run the library for the community. This has the support of the school, the academy, the governors, both county councillors in the area, the Friends and the supporters group. The school is willing to staff the library, to ensure the library, to run it, to provide all these services, but they are not able to take on a lease under their constitution. And this £15,300 is going to preclude them for going ahead with this. It's a situation which would work for everybody, and it's just not going to be able to work because of this lease problem. So I was just explaining that this, I'm asking you to reconsider this for this particular situation. And I mean, I have lots and lots of information about the reasons for Kingsthorpe being chosen over Duston, very, very equal in all the assessments. Duston has a parish council. Kingsthorpe has no parish council. There is nothing within the Kingsthorpe area that could maintain or finance a library provision. It's not the same situation as a parish, and yet it has huge deprivation. It has great need, a really strong case for keeping the library. 87 people responded to the consultation, including 2 schools, whose syllabuses and curriculum is based on library visits. Duston, I have to say there were 11 responses.
Okay, thank you.
It's a very, very well-loved, well-used library, and this proposal could work if it wasn't for this lease or this cost that is being imposed upon the academy.
All right, thank you. We'll make some comments. Well,
just very quickly to that one in particular, just a very quick response to that. And again, I wouldn't want to go into the individual libraries here today, because I think it wouldn't be fair, because every library is well loved and well used, so I'm sure lots of other people here are feeling the same. However, what I would say in that particular instance, while we did pay up the lease for, and I know these buildings intimately at this stage, even though I haven't been to many of them, in fact practically any of them. There is a willingness on the landlord to change the lease, because currently it's restricted to the county council using it as a library and we can't sublet it, but he wants to negotiate a price. So it's not about a county council making profit. The money's been invested, which is where we come back to best value, because we have to get a return on that investment, but there's also costs ahead. So I would suggest, as I've already stated, that you work up your business plan in terms of what's possible, which is what our team have asked every library to do, and we will work with you as a library group. I've only this morning, asked the library team to write back out to the group at Kingsthorpe and ask for a further meeting to discuss the position.
Right. Thank you, I appreciate all that. But the school is unable to take on a lease under their constitution and their management terms with their governors.
Sorry, Councillor, I can't solve the problem here. What I'm saying is...
Well, maybe we could discuss this again.
Well,
Yes.
I've asked the library team
Yes.
to go meet with the group and have that discussion, but we will have to complete as a group, as every other library, the business case and say what we can and can't achieve in that business case.
Okay, thank you. Well, this needs to be picked up further. So, Councillor Davenport.
Chair. Listening to everybody, it isn't as clear-cut as it would seem, because there are many of the libraries that cannot afford the rents. I mean, Urchester said about, for example, 19,000. Well, if it was that easy to make 19,000 a year plus pay for all of the running costs, etc., then surely we as a council would have been doing that and wouldn't need to be thinking about closing the libraries. And my question is, have we really thought about the unintended consequences? Because it's something we always seem to forget. And at the weekend, I heard that ministers are now saying that there is a link between disbanding the youth service, which I was a part of, and the rise in knife crime. Now, I'm not saying that for the libraries, however. There will be unintended consequences. Elderly that are isolated, the young mums and children, etc. So that is one question. The other is, I understand that on the one side we've got the libraries that can stay open because they have got parish or town councils funding them. But on the other side of the spectrum, we've got those that aren't part of a parish or town council and can't afford. And it's those that I feel, and this is just my feeling, that they're being discriminated against, because if it was a level playing field, then obviously they wouldn't be struggling to keep their libraries open, because they would have a parish council or a town council that could fund them. So I do think that's unfair. And also the perception is from the public that we're being set up to fail, that we're being asked for so much rent, and in addition to that, we've also got to find running costs, that it's like people want us to fail. And also the perception is...
Can I say that that's certainly not the intention? And if you could just ask your question...
perception.
Well, I'm going to pick up on trying to make profit or setting us, the intentional setting up to fail, because that's completely wrong. So could you ask your question, please?
But that's their perception. Just because you say something doesn't make it so. There's no reality. There's only perception. And if they feel that way, they have a right to those feelings.
You've got a
So the question
responsibility,
is...
you've got a responsibility as a member to say, look, we want to try and help you and engage as many of the other groups.
You know we are. We've been engaging the whole way through, all of us.
Yes,
so my question would be, can we please have in this a line that says we can have an extension, so that we're not stuck to deadlines, and that we could apply for an extension if we need extra time, because people feel that they're running out of time.
Okay, thank you.
And the other is, would you consider, because the volunteers have been amazing, and all the work they've put into this, and all of the time to carry on, this vehicle that you've put them on, could we consider that, say, for the first 2 years, to help them, the volunteers who will be running it, just charge them a peppercorn rent to get them on their journey, on their way, and then after that, they could then be charged when they're
Okay,
up and
thank
going.
you. Right, we've got the points there, and I'll ask Cecile Irving-Swift to respond. Thank you.
I didn't want to say when I spoke, I did visit all the libraries during the consultation, the one who were the most fragile. I met a lot of volunteers, of community. And as our chief exec has explained, we have under the law a duty of when we set up, we cannot do a peppercorn rent because we need to have base value. That is an act, and we cannot go against. Now, we have said, and we have said publicly, that our intention is not to close any library. We can't be clearer than that. We are going, a lot of volunteers have, and I speak for, I spend a lot of time visiting with Anne Lovely and Carl Dorney, plus other officers. We have listened, we spent 5-6 hours of, and we ask the right question. So I think you have to demystify when you say that is a perception. I think it's very important to get the fact and the perception. Also, the paper explained very clearly what is statutory, what is not. It has been a very, very measured exercise. And I will remind everyone where we were last year. None of us wanted. Now we propose a solution that is maybe not what everybody wants, but we have a duty to all our constituents. And also, I would like now, because I forgot in my thank, to thank the Commissioner, because last year we were, and they allow us to give us more time for the library, and when our chief exec came in August, that was one of the first things that Matt asked her to do, to take under her umbrella the library, and that is what we will like to do, and I'm sure we will manage to do it well. Thank you.
Okay, Cabinet, we'll come to the recommendations. There's just one minor typo on recommendation 2. It says outlined in section 4. It's actually section 5. So, Cabinet, are we happy to agree the recommendations in the report?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move back down the agenda to item 6 then, which is the scrutiny of Northamptonshire County Council payments to early years providers. Well, if Councillor Scrimshaw would like to take the chair and, as Chair of Scrutiny, introduce this report. It's Cabinet, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In presenting this report, I'd just really like to say how proud I am about this particular piece of scrutiny work that the committee undertook. Before the committee met, we engaged in quite a lot of pre-evidence gathering. We asked officers some prepared questions. As chairman, I met with one of the local LEA nurseries to hear their concerns, and the vice chairs met with a delegation from the private providers. Notes from these meetings, along with other comments that I and the vice chairs had received, were shared with the committee members beforehand. So when our meeting actually took place, we were already well briefed with the issues. And at that meeting, we invited officers, the current and previous portfolio holder, along with members of the public who were directly affected, to join our discussion and to answer any questions before entering the second half of the meeting, when the committee discussed exactly what we'd heard and drew up our recommendations. This enabled a full and informed discussion, and hopefully that's borne out in the comments and recommendations that we put forward to you this morning in this report. I think it was a really good example of how scrutiny should operate, and I'd like to thank all those who took part, especially the 3 vice chairs for the work they undertook beforehand. It was a good example of how the new system NCC has put in place can work, and I've already shared my thoughts about this model and details of this particular scrutiny item with scrutiny colleagues from other authorities, where it was generally welcomed and acknowledged as a good example of effective scrutiny. So I look forward to hearing Cabinet's response to our report and hope that our comments will inform and help Cabinet deal with an issue that has been causing concern for some time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scrimshaw. Councillor Baker, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, thanks go to all the members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Chairman, Vice Chairman and all of those taking part. It was a very big piece of work and we do thank you for it and for your recommendations. I agree that errors have been made in the past. We've had a complete audit of the payment systems and we do now know where the errors are. Where the errors are taking place, and we're working very hard to make sure that our system in the future is as secure as possible. We now have a team manager for that area who will oversee the payment system and help to ensure that the errors are kept down to a minimum. On your recommendations, we are very happy to agree with most of the recommendations, and item 1 on the agenda, we are not agreeing today, but we are consulting with the sector to ask them if this is what they really would like to happen. And the result of that consultation will come out at the end of July. So we're not turning it away. We're going to ask the providers what they would like to do. And also item 6 on the agenda, where the Cabinet agrees that the Council should consider reverting to the tribal payment system. We are reviewing that one too. But all of the others I'm urging the Cabinet to agree to. And I'm just passed over to Sharon Muldoon, who's the Assistant Director for Children's, to add any comments she might like to make.
Can I just ask Sharon to hang on a second? We have got a couple of public speakers. So Mrs Jean Lineker first, please.
I've only got a few things to say. It won't take 3 minutes. Just take me 3 minutes to sit down.
Jean, I know you're registered to speak on the next item. If we give you a little bit more time, did you want to cover both of them in one go? Would that be helpful or not?
It may do, yes. Yes, I think so. Yes, Councillor Derby, thank you.
Okay.
I would appreciate that. This is on nursery payments, the first one. Why are they being paid late? It has a knock-on effect with nursery-run business and staff, plus parents that having to have benefits and working and having to appeal their benefits, which affects nurseries. I have a friend that runs a nursery, and every time she's had a late payment, I think this is disgusting. It makes an effect on her business and the staff that need paying. She pays the staff out of her own money when they're late payments. This shouldn't happen and hopefully won't happen in the future. That's that one. Right, I've got some questions on safeguarding now for children. This is my speciality, if you don't mind me saying so. For 3 years now, I've been asking for children to be safeguarded. Sometimes social workers, they don't turn up. I understand there is a system in place where you get a visit. You don't have to have a visit, and then you do. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It depends on the case. The problem is the parents are not notified on that one. Inspectors should go out to children's home. Don't tell them you're coming. Please don't let them know, because when you let them know, they tidy up and they make children sort of, you know, all right? Speak to the child first when going to a home. Don't speak to any social, to any foster parent. Listen to the child. See if you can talk to the child. I think this remains on training for social workers to listen to the children, because when they do, listen, and sometimes they misbehave with foster parents and they misbehave in the home. I was called, many years ago, I was called under parental control. I don't want that on their record, like I did. That shouldn't be the case. I want children to be listened to. And I know it's hard for all social workers. I understand their plight with so many cases that they've got. We need to reduce the social workers' case. And I understand there's still 150 children still not got a social worker, and some of them are red cases. Please see to those red cases, what you call red cases. And that comes from a safeguarding person I know. When they go to safeguarding, the threshold for assessment seems to be unreasonable. Many cases not meeting assessment, social workers, there's not enough to cope with the workload. And it says here health visitors, but that's another issue with the health visitors. Leaving the present time, there's so many mid-cases being held mid-case and being left with safeguarding, that this is what the person I got it from. She's a safeguarding nurse. She's concerned and cares for the children. When allocating, they don't know where to turn to. When allocated for a child, they need to know, this is MASH, by the way, they need to know where to turn to and who to turn to, where to go to for the safeguarding of that child. Because otherwise there are going to be so many murders and sexually abused people who I'm concerned with as well, that they're getting away with it, and I don't want them to. There's a lot more, and I don't want to take up people's time, because I know it's time-consuming. When a child leaves care, they want their reports. They need to know that they can have their reports at a certain time of their age. Make the reports correct. That's my concern. Make sure every report is correct from social workers. That's a necessity, because when you grow up and you see your report and you think, my God, I wasn't like that. I'm sure I wasn't. But the abuse cases, they've got a damn right to be like that. But without some sort of social, a psychiatrist there to help them, which is what they need, some of them miss that. They must have psychological help when they're abused.
Okay, Jean, have you got any more comments to make? We've let you...
I don't think, you know full well, I've been doing this for 3 years and I've been asking for help. So please make sure that under the data protection, children can have their reports.
Okay, well, we've got a note of...
They can't complain about it.
Thank you. We've got a note of what you've said, so if there are any questions that need answering, we'll make sure we come back to you.
Please do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Brookfield.
And thank you for listening to me, everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Brookfield.
Yes, I'd like to add my acknowledgement of Jean's contribution there. Can I nominate Councillor Hales to ask a question?
Thank you. And just to remind members opposite that these are questions and not full-on speeches. Thank you.
I don't think I've ever done that, Chair. but I actually would like, I'd like to thank the Overview and Scrutiny for looking into this, the amount of hard work they actually done to this. And I think certainly from being a backbench councillor and not actually officially on a scrutiny panel, I don't think they get the amount of credit they deserve on the scrutiny committees they do. Can I just have some clarification? It's only since Councillor Baker has got up and spoke, is round what wording is going to be in the recommendations replacing 1 and 6. As she says, there's further work there. So what actual wording are you going to have replace those? So it makes it clear where we're going. Because I think it is sad that, you know, we actually had to come to this at the early years to actually do a great piece of work for this council. They actually didn't get paid for what they were doing.
Thank you. Sharon, did you want to come back on that?
Okay. I think with regards... Sorry. With regards
Can we have some quiet, please?
With regards to the first point, one of the very immediate pieces of feedback that I had was the need to consult with the sector about any changes we need to make and not just to do things to them. We absolutely gave our commitment earlier in the year that we would have a number of sessions talking to them about the payment system and whether we would continue monthly payments or whether we would move to termly payments or a number of payments in term. So it's not that we're discounting it, but we have a number of provider events. The next one is Thursday this week, asking providers, childminders, nursery settings, what their preference is, because it may be some providers might want to continue monthly payments, it may be others might want termly. So we're not discounting the recommendation, but we had very clear feedback from the sector that they wanted to be communicated on any future payment changes. So to honour that commitment that I gave them, that's what we will do, and we will report back on that. Those events are happening this month. I've met with them already early this month, and then we will give that feedback to the sector, and then we will make a final decision through consultation so we can absolutely honour our commitment, which was we wouldn't do anything to the sector without absolutely exploring the impact of that, and that's what we will do.
Thank you, Sharon. Councillor Stanborough.
Sorry, with regard to point number 6, the recommendation was to move away from, or should consider reverting to the tribal system. There's also other recommendations in the scrutiny paper about how we look at how the capita system works well elsewhere. We've been in contact with Cambridgeshire, we're in contact with Nottinghamshire, and until we really understand how we can make the system work, it wouldn't make sense to move automatically to another system. It would add more money, it would add more disruption, and it wouldn't necessarily help the sector. So we're moving on those pieces of work at speed. There's a detailed action plan, and we will make a decision around how we make capita work and or then look at that recommendation number 6. But it's prudent based on the other recommendations that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee made to just continue to look at the capita system to see if we can get that to fit and do the job that it needs to do.
Thank you. Before we take any more members, we've got another public speaker, Miss Julie Norris. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. I'm an early years provider in the county and actually have 6 early years sites, and I also work in partnership with Waltham Forest, so I do have another local authority to compare to. We used the previous system and the new system, and I'm actually here to speak in support of remaining with the current system, and I think Sharon's picked up some of the points I was going to raise, but just as a provider to say the current system being monthly payments is actually much easier to reconcile, better for business cash flow, and also if there are any discrepancies or anything like that, they can be picked up quicker rather than when we had the old system that was termly. I think also from a family point of view, children wishing to move provision within the term, if it's on a monthly payment system, is a lot easier, whereas previously, if the provider had received the payment for the term and the child wished to move within that term to a new provider, then there was a problem then trying to get the payment from the provider that had previously received it. And also, you know, we have, and I have, taken children mid-term and actually not received any payment for them at all, and took them at my own expense. So actually moving to a monthly system has actually proved much easier for that. So I think that gives greater flexibility to children and families, rather than going back to the old system. I think going back to the old system, I agree, will just bring us more problems. I think we need to stick with what we've got and make it work. I do agree with the consultation across the sector, and that's something that I highlighted when I emailed in. We do have a Facebook page of 600 members, and I did actually put a post on there last week when I put forward and said, can I speak today, and ask them what would they prefer. Would they prefer to go back to the old system of termly payments, or would they prefer to stay as we were? And it was unanimous to stay as we are. So I think, again, from a business sustainability and cash flow point of view, I think that's why they said they wanted to stay as they were. So I'm really pleased that there's going to be wider consultation, because I think sometimes some representatives, it may suit them to stay termly, but it's got to be across the whole sector. But it's a shame that with 600 providers on the Facebook page, we actually only got about 5% respond, but it was unanimous, and you know you have to speak up if you want to make change. But yeah, from that point of view, for me, I would support staying as we are. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Julie. That's very helpful comments, and we've got the rest of your comments that you submitted to us as well. So thank you for that. So, Councillor Stanborough, you had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, a couple of questions. One is, was first to say thank you very much to Fiona for her comments on the recommendations. Whatever you decide about recommendations 1 and 6, I do hope that Cabinet members will bear in mind very clearly the problems that have been caused to providers up to now, and how that has impacted on the sector, because I think the last thing that any of us in this room would want is for providers to start to move away from providing funded places because it is just too difficult for them to do from a business point of view. So I really hope and would ask that Cabinet members bear that in mind when they make the decisions, that whatever it is they make on this and in the future on the two that are going to be thought about further. Other question is around the internal audit report that has been done. Now, my understanding was from what the scrutiny meeting was that was going to be concluded in March. We're now in May. I think it would help to inform councillors greatly, especially on the scrutiny committee, if we could have an early sight of that report. My understanding is all those reports go across the Chief Executive's desk. I hope she's seen it. I think it would help to inform us if we were to know the contents of that report, and we don't have to wait till audit committee sometime later in the year to either see the report in its entirety, if it has limited assurance, or to at least receive a summary of it if it does not. So I would ask that perhaps that's something that can be facilitated. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from Cabinet? Okay, I just wanted to add that this is a subject, obviously, that we're taking very seriously, and we thank Scrutiny for the report. And, you know, it's something we maybe need to keep a check on as we move forward, and maybe Scrutiny can look at how we've got on with the recommendations that it's made, with the caveat that recommendation 1 and 6 do need to be looked at slightly differently. I thank the sector for coming to speak today and the comments made by Julie, but it's something, as I say, we're taking very seriously. We need to be better, and it's not acceptable to be, you know, allowing things to happen in the way that they've happened before. So I support the work of Scrutiny, support the Directorate in moving this forward, and would just ask Councillor Baker if she has anything to add before moving back on to Sharon Muldoon.
I just wanted to add at this point, and thank you very much for everybody's input into this, and we certainly will be taking away the comments that people have given to us, and also I have recommended to the Cabinet that they thoroughly agree with those that we haven't got extra work to do on. But I also did want to just point out at this stage that we have got restricted numbers of staff working in this area, and they have been working exceedingly hard. They do not want to have this reputation of being the staff area that doesn't get it right either. And I would just like to say that they have been trying to do their very best to resolve this situation.
Thank you. Sharon, did you want to make a couple more comments?
I just wanted to pick up on the recommendation in terms of recommendation number 2 and just give an update on that. Clearly, we've looked at all the recommendations and are working on those. At the point, at the time this was written, we had 281 providers that we owed money to. We now only owe money to 12 providers, and we are talking to those providers. The delay has sometimes been around the Easter holidays, but payments have been made and are being made this week. It is fully anticipated by the end of May, all providers will have the money owed to them. Some of the delay has been around just reconciliation and making sure the amounts owed was right. So we've absolutely moved through that piece of work, and that recommendation will be completed by the end of May.
Thank you. Cabinet, are we happy to recognise a report from scrutiny? Thank you. Okay, so we move on to item 7, and that is the next scrutiny report. So, Councillor Scrimshaw, did you want to make any comments?
Thank you, Chair. I think everybody in the organisation recognises the importance of improving children's social care, and this view was certainly one that the committee holds, and consequently we welcome moves to address the issue and offer our full support to the director as we move forward. However, we are disappointed and concerned that so far it appears little has been done to implement the recommendations made by scrutiny regarding the recruitment and retention of social workers, even though we were assured that those recommendations have been accepted in full. Until the Council can get to grips with these staffing issues, it's unlikely that the desperately needed improvements in the service will in fact materialise, and the service might therefore still be at great risk. On the issue of unallocated cases, we recognise also that things are improving, although this area still remains a major area of concern. And again, we would wish to stress that until social worker staffing issues are dealt with, this will remain a pressure. And we had further discussions about how demand fuelled by pressures such as the continued economic climate, gang-related issues, and a reduction in preventative work will all continue to add to further pressures and demand on what clearly is an already overstretched service. We also welcome an understanding that the multi-agency safeguarding hub, MASH, wasn't working as effectively as it could be, and while accepting that there has been a significant change in attitude, we wish to underline to Cabinet the importance of continued improvement in that area. For our part, we wish to stress to Cabinet our commitment to monitor future delivery and help in any way we can to inform and support Cabinet on ongoing improvements, and therefore look forward to any comments or discussions you have today, and assure you that we will consider carefully your formal response, which we hope comes to our next meeting later this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scrimshaw. Councillor Baker, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chairman. Once again, we need to thank very sincerely the work of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, all the efforts and work that's been put into this area and the recommendations that they have put forward. On receipt of the original report, the DCS and the children's team did start to implement many of the recommendations. There are now designated work areas for social work teams so they can work together. We've increased our advertising for more social workers, so we've spread the advertising further around the country. So we need social workers who are properly qualified. We're in a position that if we had, for example, 5 more really suitably qualified staff, this would make a huge difference to the way that we are able to work. We want our officers to feel supported, so we're putting in place a target operating model that will ensure smaller teams with a team leader that will have a closer working relationship. We're all very keen that we provide the very best service that we can within our allocated budget. There are many things happening in the children's service to ensure that the improvements that we need to make are in place as soon as possible. and we hope to be able to bring this plan forward to you in the very near future. All the staff in the teams are working very hard on these ends. So the one thing that we would like is for you to, I know that we have another date in the diary for us to come back to scrutiny, and we're very happy to be a regular turning up session. We don't mind. Ask us as many times as you like, and we will be as open and transparent as we can. I think I'll just pass over to, if you've got any public speakers at this stage.
Well, I'll ask some members to respond first, and then we'll ask Sharon to pick up on some of those points. Okay, Councillor Brookfield first.
Thank you, Chair. A question from Councillor Stone, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Stone, yeah, if you can keep this to a question.
I've got four
please.
questions.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
We've had 6 years of failure. I have spent 6 years listening to feedback about processes. So I've got two questions around that. One is, when are we going to see the improvement plan? And when are we going to move away from a description of process to something a bit more concrete and harder, which is to do with outcomes? And I'm saying that because I am fearful that we are watching an even further slide down of the service. So the next question is, are things improving or not? If you're going to tell me they are, I would want to see the evidence. I'm really concerned, Chair, about information I've been given following a public case review, which was about the gap between a decision that the professionals make and the agreement or not for payment for that decision from the commissioners. I've been told it can be up to 3 months. I've also been, so I'd like to ask a question about that. You know, if that is true, even if it's only happened once, then that is a serious matter, it seems to me. So I'd like to ask a question about that. The question is, do you know about that? Is it true? You know, how often has that happened? I've also been told that because of the failings of the service, because of the turnover of social workers, that can be a gap between the identification of significant risk of harm and then that case going to court. This is part of the criticism of NCC in this public case review, where the court will then say there can't be a significant risk of harm because you've taken 3 months to bring this case. So the question there is, this is written in a public case review, it's a public document. The 2 children involved are still in the same situation that they were in when the risk was identified in October. So the question is, are those children at risk? But more than that is, what is happening to make sure that that practice doesn't endure, that we do something about it and that it doesn't happen again?
Okay, thank you for those questions. We'll take other comments from members and then we'll ask Councillor Baker and Sharon to add comment or answer with those questions where we can. Councillor Stanborough.
Nominate Councillor Meredith.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question, but it's also, I need to talk about a specific item that has occurred to me as a county councillor and also as a borough council, and I'm very, very disturbed and concerned of what is happening. I got approached by a resident asking me to, because they got problems with social services and different things like that, and I'm not going to go into that specific case, but they asked me to represent them. Now, when I try to represent them, I'm frogged off with the people from the Borough Council Housing and also from the County Council. Sorry, Councillor, we can't speak to you because of data protection. So I am saying this: what is the point of councillors trying to help residents when they got concerns when we come up against the things like Data Protection Act? And I also feel very, very strongly, Mr. Chairman, that as a backbench councillor we're being defranchised because of the way the system is actually being placed. It's also my concern. And I'm in the process of starting the petition to go.
So have you got
round.
a question, Councillor Merritt?
Yes, it is.
We'll
Yes.
get to that.
And the question, quite honestly, is I suppose there's a two-pronged question here. Can you please make some inquiries? How is councillors going to represent members of their community when we're being told, I'm sorry, we can't discuss this case because of data protection? So that's one question. And the other question is, which I need answering, is this setup with Cabinet. This setup with Cabinet is flawed. It's not against democracy. It's giving up, not giving
Dennis,
us
is this
the
a
right.
question?
Yes, it is.
We'll try
it's not
and
giving
give
us
you
the
some.
right. Look, I've only got 59 seconds left. Give me chance. I don't even get time to come and speak anymore because exactly what I'm saying. I'm defranchised by not being able to take part in this county council. And I'm urging you, Chair, and members of your Cabinet to do something to put it right. Go back to the old system. So if a resident approaches me, I can raise my issues here. So this system is wrong. And I also appealed to the two commissioners. I did ask them once to be sent back to London, and I changed my opinion on that. But I am
Come on,
saying,
Dennis, I think we've got your point.
Yeah.
And you've engaged with the council and the cabinet
17 seconds and you're wasting time. So do something. Stop this ridiculous facade of what is happening here today. Give us a chance to speak.
Well, you'll have to get enough Lib Dem members to take administration, Dennis, and then you're welcome to do what you want. Thank you.
I wish the television camera was here to see.
Okay. So there were... Councillor Baker, can you respond to the relevant points in that, please?
I can just respond to Councillor Meredith that one of the ways that we can work with the data protection is if the people that have concerns email you and give you permission to speak on their behalf, and then you can send me their concerns.
Right. Some of the people are literate, they can't.
Then we need to have a meeting with them. But that is a way that normally the system works, that an email to you giving them permission to ask questions on their behalf, and anybody at any time can contact me with their concerns if they're not able to get through to social services for any reason at all. Other people do it all the time, so please feel free to do it, and I can always put them straight in touch with the person that they need to speak to.
Thank you. Going back to the flavour of the report that before us from scrutiny, Sharon, is there anything you wanted to add as acting DCS today?
I just thought perhaps it'd be worthwhile talking about the unallocated cases and give some assurance around that, really. We have daily oversight on unallocated cases. It is the case that we still have unallocated cases, and as Councillor Baker was saying, it is absolutely linked to our ability to have qualified, experienced social workers. It is also the case that we will only employ social workers that have that qualification, of course, but also have the relevant experience to make sure that we can support our teams. In terms of unallocated cases, there is a weekly review of those cases. There's daily management oversight in the operational teams, but at the leadership meeting every week. We look at the unallocated cases, where they are. There's absolute priority on all child protection cases and children that are looked after, and they will be allocated within a period of time. As in a working day, they will be allocated. It is also the case that we look at the overall caseload across the organisation, because we can allocate cases, but makes no benefit to allocate cases if social workers have got enough that they can actually practically work. So we will and have made the decision to carry unallocated cases rather than allocate them to social workers and not have the assurance that those cases are being worked. Any that are unallocated have daily management oversight. They also have duty teams. So should something happen to a case, because the reference around red unallocated cases, that isn't the case. Cases that are unallocated may be worked, but they may be worked by a family support worker, but they don't have a qualified social worker. We know exactly where those cases are. They are predominantly in the south of the county, in the Northampton team, and we have literally a weekly oversight with Teresa attending, with Malcolm attending, going through and making sure that we have got a manageable caseloads for those that are allocated, and those that aren't, that we have daily management oversight. In terms of the improvement plan, there is an improvement plan that has been recently refreshed, and that will be going to our Social Care Improvement Board next week with an update on that. We are making progress. There have been significant changes in the MASH and the first response teams. We also have partners in practice working alongside us. That's colleagues from Lincolnshire County Council who are looking at our thresholds, who are looking at our decisions. We have a number of live audits happening in the service. We know from that the majority of our cases are within the right threshold decisions. So we absolutely have that scrutiny in terms of those cases. It does remain the case that for those cases that are unallocated, they will obviously not move at the level and extent we would wish them to do so, so there will be some drift in those cases, but we absolutely look at the risk in those cases and allocate them as soon as we possibly can. With regards to Councillor Stone's questions 3 and 4, I'd need to understand the particular case and have a look at that in order to be able to address that. There is obviously the Children's Improvement Scorecard that looks at key metrics. Our children are being visited more regularly, and the number of unallocated has significantly reduced, and we are absolutely looking at the quality of our social work and the quality of our plans. The majority of our work is still at the requires improvement status, but we also have teams that are more stable, with the staff teams that are settled, and they are producing good work. We continue to embed signs of safety as our practice methodology, and that's absolutely about working with families, looking and to develop their strengths and to focus on how we can move with them to a better place for their services.
Thanks, Sharon. I just want to add as well that progress within Children First is the absolute priority of, I know, the Chief Exec, and of course we've got the Commissioner helping us here and the Directorate, and I'm pleased to hear that we have got some progress around what we should be doing and the plan, and obviously the critical element here is the social worker recruitment and retention, and we've known that for some time, and it is very difficult to make progress on there, but I know there is a plan that Councillor Stone asked about, seeing the improvement plan that the Chief Exec and the Directorate and the Commissioner have been working on, and I'm keen that certainly members get visibility and a briefing on that at an appropriate point in the future. So I will take that back and pick it up with the Chief Exec. So I just want to add as well that we thank Scrutiny for this report, like the last one, and hopefully in another couple of months, 3 months' time, or an appropriate point in the future, we can revisit this and we can demonstrate that we are moving forward on the plan that has been agreed. So, Cabinet, are we happy to recognise and agree the scrutiny report? Thank you. So, item 8, the provision outcome report for the financial year ending 31st of March 2019. Councillor Longley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Right, the first thing I'd like to say is that this is really a follow-on from period 11. There's not a huge amount new in it, other than a couple of points. So I'll start with the page 32, which is the forecast outturn. And as you'll immediately recognise, it's gone from. Bear in mind that brackets are positive news, and it's gone from 133,000 was our forecast at the end of period 11 are now saying it'll be nearer £1 million at 991. But that comes with a major caveat, is that this is now the year end. You'll all be familiar with what that means. And so there will be some adjustments around that figure. We don't know quite that, well, it shouldn't be huge, but there will be some adjustments because it's year end. Now, I'll move on to page 52, which is where the reserves are laid out for you. And there is actually an error in that table. For the 4802, when this was put together, we're going back a couple of weeks, it was pointed out that in fact we hadn't actually put in the 991 that otherwise, well, she should have done. So that makes that 4825793, which makes the reserves of unallocated reserves, this is, or unearmarked reserves, at just over 25 million. And of course the allocated reserves speak for themselves. So we're back in the black as far as reserves are concerned, due primarily, of course, to the 20 million, which you'll all be familiar with, but also the 5793 as well. So that's the reserves picture. Now, I did speak about the year end being, there has to be sort of sorted out, lots of detail. And the extra point in this month's report is item 12. And my colleague on my left has dubbed these legacy issues, which I think is fair to say, good point. And what this is all about the year-end adjustments. Now, the big one here is aged debt. Now, we've made a significant provision in the accounts for aged debt, which we hope plan is it's a provision. It's not a write-off, it's a provision, quite a different thing. And we hope that is more than we will need. We expect that to be the case. There has equally been a provision of £500,000 in for LGSS law. And there's a lot of consideration around that will take place this year. I was asked a question on Municipal Bonds Agency by my learned colleague Mick over there. Will we get any of that money back? And the answer is we hope so, and we intend to do so. But in these figures here, we've assumed the worst case scenario. So we'll, watch this space, I think, Mick, is the answer to that. And we still have to get to the bottom of the suspense account. So all in all, I expect there to be some modifications to the 991, but I don't expect it to be huge. So that's where we are from where we come. Now, moving on to the current financial year, there won't be a period one figure. Everybody's pretty much tied up with the year end, as you'd expect, and that's critical to get that right, signed off and move on. So we will not be seeing a period one report, we'll be seeing period 1 and 2 together. And I think that I'd finish this report by saying that we're now in a new financial year, and hey-ho, let's pat ourselves on the back for last year, but now we've got to do it all again. Chair, that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. Councillor Brookfield.
It's working. Can I ask Councillor Scrimshaw to be nominated as the Overview and Scrutiny Chair to make a comment? But also, can I nominate Councillor Birch to ask a question, please?
Actually, could Councillor Birch pass her question to Councillor Scrimshaw and he ask them?
They are two separate councillors. And the point about Councillor Scrimshaw making a contribution is that he is the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So it's a separate, in a separate role.
OK, well, providing they're very succinct then, please, and we don't get speeches. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I want to pass on comments from the Scrutiny Committee rather than from an opposition role. Before I comment, though, on the details of this report on behalf of the Scrutiny Committee, the first request the committee has is whether whoever is responding to Cabinet about the monthly Cabinet papers on their behalf, myself or one of the Vice Chairs, can we perhaps be given longer than 3 minutes to address the committee. We've already, as the portfolio holder has suggested, put in written questions for which we hope to have a formal response to discuss at our next meeting, and this has been shared as per previous discussions at Cabinet. But part of what we're trying to achieve as a committee is for scrutiny to be more open and transparent, and the public Cabinet meeting is obviously a very good place to engage in that sort of open dialogue, but 3 minutes doesn't really seem enough. This month, I and the Vice Chairs had a meeting with the Finance Portfolio Holder, followed by a 2-hour meeting with members of scrutiny just to go through this single item agenda. And while we accept that some of our questions won't be able to answer today, and a written submission is perfectly appropriate, it was felt by the committee members that 3 minutes is too tight. So if I could perhaps ask the Leader of the Council maybe to give that matter some further consideration for the future. But onto the agenda item itself, we welcome the fact that it's reported that the 18-19 accounts are balanced, but note the statement that this was done without the use of capital dispensation granted by the Secretary of State, while the report also says that capital dispensation is being applied to mitigate savings included in the stabilisation plan, of which roughly half weren't delivered. And the report also goes on to give many examples of where transformation funding, which is funded by capital receipts, at least in part, and other areas such as redundancies and even capitalisation of wages has been needed to balance the budget. So we felt that perhaps this statement was a bit confusing, and we'd appreciate some clarity, some clarification on the difference between the government's capital dispensation in using the previous year's capital receipts and the in-year flexible use of capital, especially as none of these funding streams would have been available to the Council. We further note that it's reported that the Council has considerable financial risk as services are volatile in nature and difficult to predict, which is a point scrutiny has made many times itself in the past, and we would urge Cabinet to be very conscious of this warning, especially as we move towards local government reform, because if future budgets are not robust enough to allow for these risks, NCC would potentially be simply passing on financial problems onto the proposed new authorities. We also note that it's still not clear how future savings in children's services will be achieved, and as a committee we're already committed to look very carefully at these plans, but recognise until the improvement plan for children's is published, then there will continue to be some uncertainty in this area. And again, we'd like to repeat our offer to do perhaps some pre-scrutiny work on future proposals. We realise that there may be a reluctance to speak about plans that aren't fully formed in public, but we could discuss these matters in private through our working group system during those early stages if need be. We would certainly like to be involved, and at the very least would ask for an assurance that we will get to see the improvement plan at the earliest opportunity.
Okay, could you start and round up then, please?
Well, I've just got one last point, if you may, Chair, because the committee was very concerned about issues around LGSS law, which are in the report, which seem to show there's a real risk that NCC won't receive its money that they owe us, including part of the ongoing overdraft. Our question is about the monthly interest payments the company should be making to us. Are they paying that, or are those simply adding to the ongoing overall debt? And the report seems to indicate that they have genuine commercial problems, and we're assuming that that's because they're losing clients. Is that the case? And if so, on what basis is only 20% of the debt figure being considered at risk? Shouldn't we be concerned about the whole figure that they have?
Okay, could you round up, please?
Thank you.
So, I think, personally, I think these questions need to be put to Councillor Longley before today. And hang on a second, Malcolm.
They have.
Okay, well, we don't really need to go over every single one of those.
So I tried to make the point that scrutiny is very keen on being open and transparent, and obviously a public meeting is a good opportunity to do that. But it's your decision, of course, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Birch, you want to ask your question quickly?
Thank you, Chair. A brief and I hope to the point question. We noted in scrutiny that there is a 2.185 underspend in children's services, and this must mean capacity is compromised. As we move forward to unitary, which we have had the confirmation of today. What are the potential pressures in the future? Because this will be a legacy that will be passed on to the individual unitary councils, and the service needs to be as robust and as efficient in order to retain the safeguarding of our children.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Longley, did you want to respond to those points briefly?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Chair. I think I'm right in saying that got to bear in mind that we do have a pre-meet here on a Thursday afternoon where the Councillor Scrimshaw and company have ample opportunity to investigate these things. But we do have the written questions here, and there's 4.5 pages of them. Nick, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, most of which you've gone through again this afternoon. And in fact, your question is indeed in these written questions as well. So they will be dealt with in that manner. The other point I would point out was that you did mention that in your view the budgets are fragile. Well, I just told you that 5 minutes ago. That's absolutely so. We've got to do it all again, and there's no walk in the park. We do it all again. So we will answer your questions here, of course we will, and thank you very much for them.
Okay, Councillor Stammer.
Thank you, Chair. And I note Malcolm's comments there about things have already been raised and we have the opportunity to have other meetings. I'm sure he wouldn't want to get to the point where we didn't have some robust debate in this public forum too. So we'll probably continue to try and achieve that. I've got a couple of questions, if I may, Chair. So the first one is around my favourite new spreadsheet, which shows the movement from the prior month under various headings, both of pressures and mitigations. And the Wellbeing and Prevention section this month tells us that an extra £300,000 worth of mitigations have been found in the library service this month, taking the figure from 884k to 1.184 million pounds worth of mitigations in the library service. What was the need for an extra £300,000 worth of savings in the library service this month, given that we were already in a surplus position and we know that the library service is under some pressure at the moment? It'd be interesting to know. Perhaps if I can also ask about the proposed, rather technical maybe, but interesting nevertheless, review of suspense and control accounts. Can we have a view in this forum as to whether the expectation is that there will be any cost to the county councils after that review, or do we expect the outcome to be broadly neutral? I would hope, because obviously that may have an effect in the future. And finally, we're told in paragraph 11.3 that one of the there are going to be some improvements in financial management and governance during the year. And one of those will be greater leadership transparency of any private companies that the council has a financial shareholding in. That's clearly welcome. I think we would all welcome greater transparency in that area. And can I ask that perhaps that information be made public once it's available? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brookfield. Davenport, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very curious for transparency about the LGSS 1.7. Will we be able to have a breakdown of that and why they owe us that, whether it be loans or overpayments, etc.?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Morris, did you have a point to make?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I would just want to make some general observations, really. I mean, you have to look at where we've come from and where we're at today. And incredible hard work, mainly by our officers and by the Cabinet as well. But our officers have worked very, very hard to get us where we are and helping us to get to a balanced position, in fact, an underspend, and to be able to clear some of the legacy issues that we've had in the past. It is an incredible achievement, and I wanted to thank all our officers and everyone who's worked hard on that. In terms of place, it's fairly we've got an underspend of 2.4 now in underspend, which is an improvement of 180,000 from the period 11. So everyone is playing their part in bringing our budgets into line and controlling the position going forward. We've also had the stabilisation plan, and if you look in each directorate, you will see that approximately £8 million worth of stabilisation measures have come in, and all of this is biting on the overspend that we've had over a period and bringing it down to a controllable position. And therefore, we must commend this paper, and we must support the officers and everyone that's made this happen. Thank you, Chair. Oh, while I was just there, Chair, I just wanted to welcome Dominic Donini, our new Director of Place and Commercial. You may be wondering who this chap sat next to me is. He is our new Director of Place. He's been here 9 days, so he's finding his feet, but I'm sure he will soon be speaking to all of you in due course. And I'd also like to extend my thanks to Ian Bowl behind, who was acting up as the Director of Place for a number of months and did a sterling job. So welcome to Dominic, and thank you to Ian. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Welcome to Dominic. I should have done that at the beginning of the meeting. Councillor Naden-Hawley.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to assure Councillor Scrimshaw that we are well aware of the risks, and I'm sure Cabinet will agree with me. We're well aware of the risks across everyone's directorate. But like Councillor Morris just alluded to, we are working robustly, challenging everything daily to ensure that we come in on budget. And just let's look at where we've come from. You know, we're moving towards a new way of governance. You know, this is the future. We have to look to the future. I want to thank Scrutiny for the robust challenge. I really appreciate it, and I welcome your continued valuable feedback, because it's all for the residents of Northamptonshire. And despite everything, we have got a 4.4 million underspend in adult social care. And everyone, all officers, I meet them on a daily basis. I spent 3 hours in customer service last week, and they are working all the time to bring in the statutory services that we have to bring in. And I just want to keep, this is the Section 114 has been lifted. We have got the stabilisation plan, transformation. We are doing everything we have to do in order to move forward. And we have got a momentous day today. The Secretary of State has given us the go-ahead. And yes, we've been on a long journey, but let's face it, we've come a long way from where we were 18 months ago. And I just recommend this report to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Naden-Hawley. I just want to add a couple of comments that this report, I think, has evolved over certainly the last 12 months or so, and we've talked about with the commissioners trying to get the way we report in the most open and transparent way, and to instill best practice in how we do that. And I think we're getting there. I've listened to comments certainly from Scrutiny and from some of the members that are the backbenchers that are here today, and those have been incorporated, such as graphs and how we display information. I think we've got this report to a good place, and that is something that we obviously need to promote and continue to work on. And just to echo the points made, that this has been a hell of a lot of hard work to get to the point we're at today. We've still got some tidying up to do around the end of the year, and also that issue around legacy, in that obviously we've got the decision today. That means that we know exactly where this organisation is going, and we made that commitment. I made that commitment with Cabinet to our members that we can do everything we can to put the financial position of this county council in the best place it can possibly be, and that stands for dealing with the legacy issues, and so we're going to bequeath this on to the next iteration of local government in Northamptonshire in the best position it possibly can be. So, are there any further comments, Councillor Longley?
Yes, Ian would like to have a few words on the capitalisation.
Thanks, Chairman. The various questions that have been put, of course we will respond to those, but one of them, which I think is a really important point, is the capitalisation dispensation, and whether it has or has not been used to balance the 18-19 budget. On page 32, there's a table there, number 4, and it shows how the capitalisation has been applied. The first element is to remove the previous year's deficit. The second part is to create the £20 million in unallocated reserves. And the final part, and we've been able to capitalise because of the position on the stabilisation plan, particularly the council tax element. Now, we haven't, that shortfall in the stabilisation plan, we've used other measures to balance the budget in year. But what we have done, we've taken the opportunity from that shortfall to convert capital receipts into revenue, and they'll be applied for the legacy issues that have just been discussed, and the balance will be transferred to an earmarked reserve. So I just want to make it clear that in balancing 18-19 wasn't a reliance on the capitalisation direction. There have been capital receipts used in other areas, under the flexible use of receipts for transformational expenditure. That's no different to any other authority on part of its budget delivery plan.
Thank you, Ian. Malcolm, did you want to add
that's
anything
fine.
else?
Yeah, thanks for your comments on the spreadsheet, Chris. Much appreciated. I can't answer it off the cuff. I think it's anyway. We will, of course. Yeah, and far be it from us to prevent you from having any robust debate on the issue. Far be it from us. On the suspense and control accounts, we don't know what the outcome is that yet. We're not expected to be huge, but it needs to be bottomed, and when it does, I'm quite happy to share it with whoever's interested. I think on the LGSS law, I have to be careful what I say there because it is a private entity, a separate entity, and I've been advised I have to be careful. But be assured that we have it very much in our sights, and we intend to get the best possible result. There'll be quite a lot of debate on LGSS law in this coming year, and we will keep you informed as we go along. And hopefully we'll have a good outcome of it. Other than that, I do commend the report. As I say, we're now in the next financial year. This one's history. We need to move on and make sure we sort out financial year 1920, which we fully intend to give it our best shot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Cabinet, do we agree the recommendations? Thank you. Move on to item 9, monthly capital report. Councillor Longley.
Yeah. The significant number on here is item 1, and that's the amount of the expenditure in the capital. Now, you will, those of you that were listening carefully when we were putting the budget together would have picked up that when we're spending capital from that point on, there's a change of policy in that we only spend capital where there can be a grant, and that's fine, somebody else is paying, or we have a capital receipt swap. What I mean by that is that we sell one asset to buy another because it's a better arrangement. That may take place. It can be a productivity issue, and I laboured that, you may recall, at the last at the budget meeting. Or, of course, we take it from revenue to put into buy capital assets. Those are the criteria, and because of that, good, in my view, good financial approach. We again, the capital outturn expenditure has in fact dropped from the forecast we made last month down to 89 million. So that's a good arrangement. I think that's really the key point of the report. Chair, I'd like to recommend the report for acceptance.
Thank you, Councillor Longley. Councillor Brookfield.
Thank you, Chair. It is me this time. I've got 3 questions to ask Councillor Longley. One is about the optimisation work at Angel Square and the 500,000 that is allocated to that. The other is, are the plans at Angel Square? No, I'm just going to outline what I'm going to ask you. One's about the plans for an additional floor at Angel Square, and the third one is about the roads programme and the highway schemes, and maybe Councillor Morris can help you with that as well. As more staff move to Angel Square, could the council consider improved provision of toilets for the staff? I have been asked to ask you this, and it's in the light of the campaign, the ongoing campaign by Unison, raising awareness of menopause and also the provision of feminine hygiene products, not just for women who are going through the menopause, obviously, but for all women, because there is no facility at the moment in the ladies' toilets and no provision of feminine hygiene products. And that is really a basic health and safety at work requirement, I would think. Okay, so that's a question really. Would the council consider improving the toilets and the maintenance of the toilets? It's about reducing inequalities, and it's definitely about making life more comfortable and happier for staff as they work here, because there are going to be more of them. The other question was put to me to ask you, which is about how we're getting on with the plans for the additional floor within Angel Square, and perhaps remodelling the building. I don't know if that's something that's being considered or has been shelved. And on the roads programme, I didn't mean to be provocative in asking that. I was just. And then on the roads programme, there is an additional amount on the front page of your report about potholes work, and also as councillors we've been asked if we would like to nominate areas or roads in our divisions for remedial works, and of course we know that we've been told that doesn't attract extra funding, but we would like some. So we're asking you if you will build that in. And finally, congratulations and welcome to Dominic Donini.
Okay, thank you. Before we go back to those, Malcolm, we'll take a question from Councillor Davenport.
Thank you, Chair. I probably should know this, but on 4.1, both of the boards mentioned, are they closed meetings? I honestly didn't know anything about them. And the other thing is, Buckton Fields, are we okay with payments on that, or do we think that could be a risk in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stanborough.
Thank you, Chair. So, page 69, bottom of the page, item 2, Angel Square optimisation. Say at the absolute outset, I'm fully 100% supportive of creating more places in this building for staff to work in this building. I think that's absolutely the right thing to do. If the need is there, we should make sure we address it. It's the cost that bothers me. On the basis of what we're told in that paragraph, we're going to increase the amount of PC-equipped desks from circa 1,000 to 1,400. There's 400 extra desks, some of which already exist. 500,000 divided by 400 is £1,250 per desk. Is that really what it's costing? Or are there other things we're paying for with that £500,000 we're not told about in this report? And if there are, perhaps that's information that ought to have been put in the report, because a misleading impression has been created otherwise for the want of information. So perhaps if somebody, not necessarily the finance portfolio holder, if he doesn't have the information at his fingertips, could explain, I think that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass that straight to the Chief Exec, if we can just get a comment on that. Thank you.
Do you want to do anything?
Which bit of mine?
Just on the optimisation.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot more to it than, I think, just desks, though, isn't there?
Well, hang on a minute. Let's go through the chair.
Yeah.
Teresa.
Sorry, apologies if it wasn't clear, but there is a lot more, obviously. In order to create that many additional spaces, there's infrastructure needed, so upgrading of the electricity supply, for example, because the supply wouldn't support that additional number of desks and PCs without being upgraded. And it also needs PCs as well. So there's IT equipment cost in there. There's quite a substantial amount of different costs, so it's not just a straightforward cost per desk.
Thank you. Councillor Morris, did you want to add anything to the place-related?
Well, in terms of the highways, there's certainly the pothole fund, which is £812,000, 440 for that year, for the 1920. This is extra money that we get from government to help with our roads, that helps save revenue essentially on repairing of roads. And it's very important that we get this money every year. Obviously, we will always try and get more money for our highways where we can, and we continue a process of lobbying government and our MPs for further money. And actually, I must name-check Michael Ellis, who's always been very at the forefront of getting this pothole fund for us, together with all our other MPs in the county. But he's certainly been in the forefront of getting that money for us. And we will obviously continue to try and get more money, but it does help take pressure off revenue within highways and helps us to repair our roads in a better and more sustainable way going forward. In terms of the pick list that I think was being referred to, it's not a pick list. It was just, we were just asking councillors for roads that they had an ambition around possible repairs on. It was made very clear that there wasn't extra money for those roads, but where we can obviously look at that list, we will have a look at that list as and when we've compiled it all. I believe most of the councillors have sent in some roads. Some have sent quite complex lists in, I believe, but we will be working through that, and we will see how that sits. And we may well ask for more funding from government for something like that, but just to make it clear, it was more of a priority list for the area rather than actual money spent from the budgets. And in terms of the toilets, I don't know whether the Chief Executive wants to deal with that, but Place can look at that, I would imagine, but I'm sure Teresa may have something to say on that.
Just to say, I have a constant and ongoing snagging list for this building, and I have my colleagues in the Place Directorate driven, demented by my constant nagging. I can assure you, everything from the use of dishwashers to, you'll have seen additional microwaves go in a few months ago. I am ever vigilant, but I can assure you there's no extra floor going into the building, nor was there ever a plan to do such a thing.
Thank you. Councillor Longleaf, you would like to sum up?
Well, some of these have been answered. I wasn't going to really go into great details on the toilet side. I thought they were rather far more qualified than I. So I'll leave that one if that's okay. I think very adequately answered. The additional floor, I never heard of it, so that's easy. And I think that, again, Teresa's answered that one well. The highways, Ian's covered adequately. Welcome aboard, Dom. You see what you're in for. 4.1, what are they? I think, Julie, you were asking that. Yeah, what both of those are a tightening up of control, in particular on capital items I just alluded to, and they're effectively chaired by the executive, Teresa, or somebody appropriate, and it's just a process, a tightening process, make sure we're in order.
Oh, so it's not a meeting, public?
No, very much so. No, and Buckton Fields payment, somebody asked about that, and these are secured by charges on the land. So now, well, every transaction has its risks, but if we've got to still loan the land and we haven't got the money, we foreclose. So, and I think the other item that of the 500k includes PCs, etc. I think Teresa's answered very adequately. So, Chair, I think that's answers them, and I'd ask you to accept the report.
Thank you, Cabinet. Do we agree the recommendations?
Agree.
Thank you. So move on to item 10, the consultation regarding the special schools and designated units sufficiency report. Councillor Baker, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm asking for approval to bring a consultation process to the recommendations set out in the report. So this is a good news report. This is for children with EHC plans and special needs. This consultation will cover where additional capacity for specialist plans are required, what type of specialist places are required to meet the needs of the many differing challenges that face these young people. This paper has been discussed at SLT and the Place Setting Board in April 2019. We now wish to undertake the eight-week consultation with our stakeholders, with specific engagement with children and young people with SEND and their families to get their views. Benefits from this proposal will be the ability to provide specialist education in all areas of the county. This will enable young people to be close to their communities whilst being educated as opposed to now having to travel quite long distances to find the education that they need. These changes will be funded by a DofE grant, of which it's 4.8 million. Details of the whole of this consultation are in your papers, and following on from this consultation, a full report of the findings and recommendations will be brought to Cabinet. So, Cabinet, I ask for your approval.
Thank you. Councillor Brookfield.
It's worn out. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. In acknowledging the work that's gone into this report, and there certainly is some, the opposition group has a recent history of monitoring and highlighting the provision for SEND and for children who have EHC plans. And so this report can only be welcomed. I do want to name check one or two people who I know have worked tirelessly in this authority, and Alison Shipley and Gwen Bottrell have worked incredibly hard, both on an individual case basis, but also on the strategy of the council going forward on this. I just hope that the consultation will come up with lots of imaginative ideas and lots of we'll come up with a grounding on which you can base, the building of this service. We know that our officers and our families and children have been working against a backdrop that has been challenging, a financial climate that has been challenging, and so it really is very important that the officers again are praised in this instance in working against that difficult backdrop. And I just want to highlight the paragraph that you highlighted, Fiona, which I find incredibly important, that the benefits from this proposal will be the ability to provide special educational places in all areas of the county so that our children don't have to travel far from their own homes and their own communities to access that education. So I'll be watching this report and the outcome of the consultation with interest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to add, I think this is a very good and very comprehensive report. If you look at through the appendices, there's a lot of information in there, and also recognise the work of Gwyn and her team, especially with the implementation of EHC plans, and also in how we look to provide the sufficiency of places. I think Northamptonshire is known as providing good quality special educational needs education. So, the more we can provide, the better, obviously based on evidence and what's needed where. So I support this report and look forward to seeing the result of the consultation. Fiona, did you want to add anything?
I just wanted to thank, as Councillor Brookfield said, our officers have worked very hard on this, and Gwyn has sat behind me throughout this meeting just in case there were any questions that you wanted to ask that I wasn't able to cover. So I thank her for that as well. But I do really think this is one of our good news stories, and I look forward to the consultation it's starting.
Thank you. Cabinet, do we agree with the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. So move on to item 11, Councillor Morris and Cliftonville Road improvements, Northampton.
Thank you, Chair. I really want to go into a little bit of detail on this. I know we've had quite a long day already, but I think it's important to emphasise the good news, and this is again good news. We are very good in this county at finding funding for infrastructure projects and things like that, which I'll give a bit more detail on later. But this is a specific one, which is the Cliftonville report, and you see the recommendations there. This has been on our priority list for some time, and we recently were successful in bidding for some government funding from the National Productivity Investment Fund. Because the local contribution was required, which is often the case now with infrastructure going forward, it has been held up for some time, but we're in discussions with NBC, who have sort of indicated that they would be willing to help fund this project. They do have some concerns over the scheme, so we are being very careful to make sure that we try and remove those concerns for them. I know Councillor Strachan is probably aware of this one, and he's probably going to ask a question, but we have met, or the officers have met with him, and I just wanted to allay any fears that he may have over this potential scheme. The focus of the scheme is on widening the road from Bedford Road to the Northampton General Hospital back entrance to give 3 lanes northbound, which is obviously going to really help ease up the congestion and pollution and all the things that we're concerned about around those areas with the heavy traffic. It's accompanied by improvement to the Billing Road and Wellingborough Road junctions to help again make the traffic flow better, and to reinstate 2 lanes on part of the Wellingborough Road. We're going to obviously keep up dialogue with NBC and other partners that would be involved with the project, and there will be a public consultation in June at which further information can be given. But I do think this is good news. We also obviously would like to see some cycle routes on most of our infrastructure. I know Lucy Whiteman is a particular advocate of healthy living and cycling, so we are keen obviously to see where we can improve the cycle routes around Northamptonshire, that should somehow feed into what we are doing here. Obviously you're restricted maybe by the roads, but where possible we would like to see that improved, and I know Lucy will be pleased about that. But that's, in a nutshell, that's that paper, Chair, and I recommend it to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Brookfield.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to nominate Councillor Strachan for this item and the following item, so I don't have to put
You
my
may as well
hand up
stay
again.
there. Thank you. Councillor Strachan.
Although we welcomed the scheme, this scheme initially named the Cliftonville Corridor, there are concerns that I have recently raised at a meeting I had with both Chris Ragg and Chris Jarman. The concern I raise are not just my personal views. Both Councillor Phil Larratt and Councillor Penny Flayville of Northampton Borough Council have raised similar concerns with me. These concerns are based on our local knowledge, for which local councillors hope will be taken into consideration and adjustments made to the plan before the groundwork is passed on to our subcontractors. Just to give some idea, we believe that far from improving the air quality, as mentioned in 3.2, air quality would be adversely affected in the Wellingborough Road High Street area. This is because of removing the right turn at the Cliftonville Billing Road junction and sending all the traffic, although we will have an extra lane, straight up to the Wellingborough Road junction. It would be more favorable to see smart lights installed at the junction, also at that junction, which is the Cliftonville Billing Road junction, and also at the Wellingborough Road junction with St Edmund Street junction. Since the initial plans were drawn up, Chairman, we have had changes at the Bedford Road to accommodate the link road to and from the university. Following my meetings with Chris, we were assured that those changes would also be taken into consideration during the review. So we are thankful for that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Councillor Strachan. As you know, we're going to be consulting on this scheme in June anyway, and you've already met with the officers, and of course I'm always happy to meet with you and any other concerned parties from NBC, like Councillor Larratt or whoever it might be, in order to help alleviate your concerns. But we will take all that into account once we've done the consultation, so I would urge you and fellow councillors and residents to feed into that consultation, because it will have a vital impact on what we may or may not be able to do within the confines of the site, because the roads are quite narrow as it is, so it may be limited what can be done, but we'll certainly have a look at it. So if you want to speak to me afterwards, we can organise more meetings or however you want to do it.
I did tell the officers because we are concerned about the hospital as well.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and we will meet to iron out those problems if we can. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Cabinet, are you happy to agree with the recommendations? Okay, thank you. Item 12, then, the A45 Northampton Growth Management Scheme. Councillor Morris, if you'd like to.
Thank you, Chair. I do like to keep going on about infrastructure and how good we are at getting our funding in for said infrastructure. There's been a lot of sort of negative stories about the council over the last 18 months, it's fair to say. But one thing we've carried on doing is delivering infrastructure, and we continue to deliver it, and we will continue to deliver it till the end of the existence of this council and into the new unitaries. Some of the priorities of the new unitaries will be set probably now or now-ish for future infrastructure. So this one, again, is a very good news story. I was going to read a very long list of what we've achieved, but I think if I said we've probably achieved something like £250 million worth of infrastructure over the last number of years, that gives you an idea of the scale of investment we've had into the county. But onto this specific paper. Essentially, this is a Highways England scheme, and they've asked us to manage it. So, again, good news, because it costs us nothing effectively and helps improve our highways around the town and certainly in Northamptonshire. The funding has come from developer contributions, which has been topped up by a £4 million grant from Highways England Growth and Housing Fund. We will be tackling the junctions on this as and when the money is available, because as we know with development funding, it doesn't all come in at once. So as we get the 106 or SIL money, we will start to tackle them as we go through. But the first sort of, and this has been through planning, all of these have been through local planning authorities already and have been approved, so they've already been scrutinised to a certain degree. Obviously there will be opportunities probably to have a look at what the scheme is proposing as we go forward, but in terms of scrutiny, it's had scrutiny through various planning forums at the various districts and boroughs, so it's already been quite well aired in that sense, but it is good news. The first improvement is at the Queen Eleanor roundabout, and then at Brackmills we are going to be combining our work with that relating to the Homes England's Hardingstone development in order to try and avoid digging up the junction twice. They are also contributing extra money to help fund this. The Queen Eleanor roundabout works are the biggest element of the scheme. We are widening the carriageway from 2 to 3 lanes within the existing bridge structures over the A45. This is something we did on the other side of the roundabout about 20 years ago, so it will help match up the other side of the road. The works to Brackmills are more modest, but will still incorporate some widening. The last for now is the Great Billing work, which is basically just signalising the existing junction. The other junctions will be tackled in future as more funding becomes available. It's worth mentioning we won't do any work to the M1 junction 15 until we know if it will be completely rebuilt by Northampton Gateway, and as we know that is all subject to various planning matters at the moment. But in essence, this is very good news for the county and continues to help keep us moving and keep the economy growing. So I commend the paper to the Cabinet Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Brookfield, Councillor Strachan.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Any change, however small, that improves the flow of traffic through the Northampton stretch of the A45 will be welcomed by motorists using this route on a daily basis, especially at intersections entering and exiting the roads at peak times. Over the years, we have seen improvements, as mentioned earlier, in terms of widening the roads between Lumbertubs and Barnes Interchange and improvement at Barnes Interchange and Brackmills. I believe the proposed initiative at the Queen Eleanor and the Great Billing Interchange will make a difference, and I welcome it. In 3.6, has drawn our attention to the application for the proposed Northampton Gateway Rail Freight Interchange. Chairman, I am yet to find anyone in Northampton in favour of this scheme. The word is it would only provide a handful of jobs, but cause major traffic congestions. The developer's own assessment for this proposed link road is 4,245 HV movements and 9,871 light vehicle movements per day. Chairman, as you well know, Northampton and Long Bugby is on a loop line that has rail passenger capacity problems. The gateway development is dependent on the use of the loop line, which, should it go ahead, will have a negative effect on rail passenger service, even without taking into consideration the growth agenda. We should all oppose this scheme, and I hope this council will. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Adam Brown asked to make some points on this item as well. Welcome, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. And Councillor Strachan's already done a sterling job in speaking out against the appalling proposals at Junction 15. But it is actually that the point about Junction 15 that I wanted to raise as well, because there are ongoing concerns about the delays in reaching a decision on Rail Central. The developer's already been given an extension in submitting traffic data to the National Planning Inspectorate in order for them to be able to make their recommendation to the Secretary of State. I understand from the residents group opposing Rail Central that the developer has also missed deadlines for submission of further data to the National Planning Inspectorate, and reaching a decision on Rail Central in particular looks like it could be much delayed. I would simply ask the Cabinet member what reassurances he can provide to residents, particularly in my division of Bugbrook and particularly in the villages of Milton, Malta and Blisworth, who are already greatly affected by the inadequacy of of Junction 15. What pressure we can put on the Planning Inspectorate to expedite their decision, and also just reassurance that no matter how long the Planning Inspectorate and the Secretary of State take to reach a decision, the upgrade to Junction 15 and the funding associated with it will continue to be a priority within this scheme and will not suffer as a result of any delays to the decision regarding the two SRFIs.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, before we go back to Councillor Morris, as a Northampton councillor, I of course welcome investment in the infrastructure around Northampton, and particularly around those pinch points that many of us, when we try and drive away from One Angel Square, we get stuck in. So I also do share the concerns raised about the Rail Central application and the impact. And I know we had a presentation from some of the applicants quite a while back, and we challenged some of the thinking around the potential investment in the in those pinch points that are mentioned in here. So I support the points made. Thank you. Councillor Naden-Hawley.
Thank you, Chair. I too, welcome this report, because living in Corby rural is the roads are not that great at times, but thankfully we've got the A43 bypass from Kettering to Corby, which has really improved the road structure, and the new roundabout at Stannion as well. So I really welcome this report. Anything that we do for the residents of Northamptonshire to alleviate the issues on the road is welcomed by me, and I'm sure Cabinet as well. Thank you.
Councillor Morris. Sandra.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Brown, you make some very good points, as does Councillor Strachan. It is with the Secretary of State. It does seem to be a certain delay with it, and I can assure you that we will keep as much information, or get as much information as we can, as to where we're at with that. I mean, there are a number of concerns for me as the portfolio holder. One of them is that they are supposed to put a lot of improvements into various junctions and various other roads as and when they do this, and we have a grave concern that the funding package that they have offered is probably going to be insufficient to deliver that infrastructure. So we may end up with infrastructure that we can't deliver because they haven't given us enough money to deliver it. And so, yeah, we share the same concerns, and we will keep the pressure up on the Secretary of State in however we can. But it is his decision, unfortunately, and we have lobbied hard as well. And we did a motion to council, as you know, on various other things. So you did, yes, you did. Indeed, you did. So. I think you know what we're thinking. We will try and keep the pressure up on them, and if we get any more information, we'll share it. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Cabinet, are we happy to agree the recommendations?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Good. Okay, we'll move on to the last item, item 13, the funding of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children who appeal, all rights exhausted. Councillor Baker. Okay, sorry. Okay, Mr. Kieran Dowling. Thank you for waiting all the way through this.
That's fine.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I turned 18 myself just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm taking time out of my A-level revision to come here today because I feel so strongly that this proposal is wrong. You do not become an adult overnight at 18 just because you have a birthday. I know and understand that the council is facing serious financial problems, but if you knew these young people, you would not be able to do this to them. They are amazing and have already suffered so much. I'm a volunteer at a youth club, Learn to Live, which supports young people who have come here as refugees and who have sought asylum. Learn to Live is part of the Northampton Town of Sanctuary charity. I've been privileged to get to know these young people and hear their stories. I'm in awe of them for the journeys they have made, the incredible hardship many have suffered, and for the way they deal daily with the loss of loved ones. Supporting them to return home sounds great, but many do not remember home and do not have family or friends to support them when they get there. These young people are no different to other young people the same age. They are proud to be citizens of Northamptonshire and aspire to contribute to society as adults. They hope, like other young people, to go to university, to become mechanics, accountants, chefs, footballers, and so many other things. They are friendly, kind and compassionate young people, despite the many difficulties they have faced. I've been fortunate to live safely here whilst I've been growing up and getting an education. I know I can rely on the support of my family as I move into the next stage of my life. I just want these young people to have the same. My parents have not abandoned me because I've turned 18. I don't understand why the council thinks it can abandon those young people for whom it has been a corporate parent. If you have children or grandchildren of a similar age, please think about how you would feel about them being left penniless, without a roof over their heads and vulnerable to exploitation by criminals. I read in the press that other authorities are doing the same, but it is not a race to the bottom. I want to be proud of the county where I was born and grew up for its compassion and humanitarianism, and for us to set a better example. Just because you do not have to support these young people doesn't mean you cannot support them. There can be mistakes and injustices in the application of national policies, and we know this has happened where immigration is concerned. For me, hiding behind policies that can be cruel to justify even greater cruelty is wrong. Please consider acting with kindness to this handful of young people who need your support. In a different time and place, it could be me or your children or grandchildren facing such a difficult future. £330,000 is not a huge sum and is less than the £500,000 to be spent on office equipment and stationery. These young people are human beings in desperate need of help and support. Where are the council's priorities? Finally, I would like to invite all councillors to visit us at Learn to Live to meet these incredible young people and to think again about whether they should be casualties of the current financial situation. Surely there are other ways to do this. The impact on these few young people will be devastating. They do not deserve this. They have suffered enough. Please think again about this proposal.
Okay, thank you, Kieran. Councillor Baker, would you like to introduce the item, please?
Thank you, Chairman. This paper is being presented as part of savings which have been previously outlined in the stabilisation plan. This previously agreed stabilisation plan explored all areas of potential savings from non-statutory services. The proposed policy change is in line with the Immigration Act of 2016, which directs that those who have had their rights exhausted have no call on local authority funding. The local authority receives no Home Office funding for young people who are appeals right exhausted. In considering this change in policy, We are aware of other local authorities, Lincolnshire and Milton Keynes, for example, who already end funding and support for ARE young people. The policy affects only a very small number of our asylum-seeking young people. This process will work very much on a case-by-case basis, looking sensitively at the individual circumstances for each young person, in line with human rights legislation, human rights assessments, and will be taken prior to any decision which seeks to end funding and support. Should the decision be made to end support, a policy for gradual reduction of support will be followed, and all those affected will be transitioned into other support services, such as the Red Cross and other charities. If appeal rights exhausted, young people may be eligible for support under Section 4 of the Immigration Act. This support will include accommodation. As young people previously looked after, advice from the Leaving Care Duty Service will remain available to all ARE young people for the future. So I recommend this report to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Adam Brown asked to make some comments on this paper.
Thank you, Chairman. This is clearly an emotive issue for some, but my perspective on this really is that if we are to support the welfare state that this council clearly plays an important part in, the key part of that is actually enforcing an immigration policy that is effective and that is fair. Ultimately, we are talking about a group of individuals who have exhausted their legal appeals, who do not have a legal right to reside in the country. And from the correspondence that I've received, from the comments that I've read in relation to a Chronicle and Echo article earlier in the week, I think there is widespread public support for the move that Cabinet is considering this afternoon. I commend the proposals to provide ongoing support to the young people over a 12-week transitional period, and I would suggest that this is absolutely the right way to go in ensuring that we can provide the best value for money to Northamptonshire residents and do the very best that we can for the people who need and are entitled to our support.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Brookfield.
I've been told I can say shame all I want, so I will. I think that was an appalling statement to make. However, I'm calling on Councillor Stone to ask a question. And apologies, Chair, but I'm leaving it.
Okay.
Chair, I noted that you allowed Councillor Brown to make a statement. So are you going to afford me the same privilege?
You're allowed to ask a question, Councillor Stone.
You afforded Councillor Brown the right to make a statement.
Wrap your question up in a statement.
I
with a question at
have. I
the
have
end.
got 10 questions, but they're within a narrative. I would like
Well, you've got
to...
2 minutes, 30 seconds.
I would like to pass that round to the members, please, not to the officers. I want to make several points. One is, this is the worst piece of this is the worst proposal I have ever come across in the whole entire time that I have been a councillor. And it means that you are expecting our young people to pay for the financial mismanagement of this county council. It's completely out of order. 3.5 in this report, the Immigration Act of 2016 is advisory. It is not legislation. One of my great concerns is that very few people sitting around this table know these young people. They do not understand why the Eritrean, the Ethiopian, the Sudanese, whosoever are in this country. They are in this country because they're escaping slavery, they're escaping persecution because they're a member of a minority, or they're escaping civil war. These unaccompanied asylum seekers who came here as children often have parents who are missing, older siblings who are in prison, grandmothers who are hiding in the countryside and not accessible to them. You return them home, they will not be treated and greeted with flowers, they will be treated and greeted with guns, and I think that is a shameful prospect for any of us sitting around this table to even think about. It seems to me that money in this authority is a very elastic commodity. So you can lose money on LGSS law, you can spend squillions on
So could you get to the point of your question,
but you cannot spend money looking after our children. The young people in question bring enormous benefit to this town and to this county, and you have got to take some responsibility for the reason why they are all rights exhausted at 18. A lot of that is because of the inefficiencies of the service from the time that they were 15 to the time they reached 18.
Councillor Stone, can you ask your question and then wrap up, please?
Okay, I've got lots of questions.
Well,
One is, can we please have a better
I'm asking you to stop.
Impact assessment?
Close the meeting.
I
Listen, you respect the position of chair and listen to what the comments I make and requests I have, or you don't participate in the meeting.
You're being discriminatory, Chair, because you allowed one of your councillors to make a statement.
Well, I'm the chairman. I can run the meeting how I see fit.
Well, it's discriminatory, and that is the other question.
You're finished.
That
Right.
is the other question I wanted to ask. Are you aware,
Councillor Stone, can you finish,
discriminating
please?
against a particular group of people? So if you treat one lot of children this way and another lot of children this way, it's against the law. It's discriminatory.
Right, we'll have no debate on this item. Cabinet, do we agree the recommendations of the report?
Yes.
Agreed. Thank you.
That is shameful.
That concludes the meeting. Thank you.